You're listening to the TV Obsessive channel, presented by TVObsessive.com.
Hello, and welcome back to episode 20 already of the TV Obsessive podcast. My name is Ryan Kirksey, writer and contributor for the site, and I'm joined by someone staring at me with their binoculars from a sewer. It's Cameron Crane, the executive editor of TV Obsessive. Cameron, how is it down in that sewer?
It's all right. I come out periodically and go take a shower in a rest stop and
Yeah, pay for your shower
in my car with an egg timer set to 59 minutes that I wake up from before it goes off.
Yeah, what a life. Must be a nice life you have doing that.
We're referencing the episode we're going to talk about today. If people haven't seen it, Better Call Saul, Plan and Execution, and Lalo. I actually love Lalo.
Oh man, me too.
As a character, obviously not as a human being. But we'll hold off on we'll hold off on that and hold off on getting into any spoilers until the latter half of the podcast, as per usual. Basic plan first. We'll talk a bit about what's going on in the news, what we've been watching, what we're looking forward to a bit, maybe today more than what we're watching currently.
Definitely.
And then the latter half, we'll dig in on Better Call Saul, Plan and Execution, which I have chosen to put on my Mount Rushmore of TV episodes.
Yeah, we're gonna have the discussion about that versus long time. I think we're gonna have to revisit it maybe.
It's interesting. I wanted to choose this one in part because of the fact that you'd said that long time replaced it for you. Also because we did Breaking Bad. I've had this question in my mind about how committed I am to this notion I sort of have that Better Call Saul is a better show than Breaking Bad. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit. I don't know. I can't. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. What's in the news? It's November 1st. We're recording one day later in the week than usual because yesterday was Halloween. It's Wednesday, November 1st. What's been going on? What's caught your eye in the news this week?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, and we're far from the first or early stages of people to comment on this, but obviously the biggest news since we last recorded was to a great extent the death of Matthew Perry and then also Richard Moll from Bull from Night Court. Just two really great actors. I don't know what your experience was either with Friends or with Night Court or these characters. I was always someone who thought that Chandler and Phoebe were the two best line deliverers on Friends. And no, just it's kind of a shocking loss from a show that, loved to watch when I was early 20s and thought, oh, that must be cool, a life like that. And didn't ever end up anything like that. But yeah, just sort of a couple of shocking deaths this past week.
Yeah, I mean, I think Matthew Perry is probably more shocking.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Richard Moll a little bit briefly, then return to Matthew Perry. I feel like a little bit Richard Moll got overshadowed, because he passed away, and then a couple days later, Matthew Perry did.
Yeah.
I mean, also, arguably, Matthew Perry's death feels like a bigger deal because he was really so young.
Yes.
And,
yes.
It was kind of out of nowhere where I don't know. I don't think it was as out of nowhere with Richard Moll. Not like I'm a fanatic follower, but I think he was like not doing so well for a while.
Yeah. And he was 80 years old. So
yeah. And he wasn't a part of the reboot.
Right.
And I don't know if that was because he didn't want to do it because he thought it was stupid, or if it was because like he wasn't up to it, or whatever. But that's a loss. I mean, I don't know how much you watched Night Court. I watched the original Night Court as a kid. It was on in syndication and things like this. And to be honest with you, Bull was always my favorite character, actually.
Yeah. I did love watching old episodes of Night Court. I can't say I saw it maybe a little bit too young when it first aired, but yeah, it's one of these great shows. You find it on at 10 o'clock at night, and it's great to watch a couple episodes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a good sitcom, and I don't know. I mean, like, honestly, Dan Fielding, John Larroquette's character, and like the other characters are almost more standout, but Bull is kind of like holds the thing together in a certain way. So that's a shame. But yeah, man, Matthew Perry.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say about Matthew Perry. I mean, he seems, by all accounts, to have been just a great guy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
of course, struggled with addiction for a long time, but
Yeah.
also I know kind of committed himself to helping others with addiction.
Yes, that was very much the later part of his life, was helping others with that. And I hate seeing some of these things where people are, almost desperate to see the toxicology results that'll come out in a few weeks. Sort of that play any part in his supposed drowning in his hot tub. These things, just people that want there to be some sort of explanation for that. But let's just let it be tragic. Let it be something that we can celebrate, as opposed to going back and revisit what might have been something that he struggled with for sounds like decades.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly one can imagine that was going on. Like, I don't know. I don't know that I need the toxicology. Probably, I mean, it's a sudden thing. He's drowning. Why? How do you not wake up and all that kind of thing? But regardless of that, it's incredibly sad.
Yeah.
You mentioned Friends. I feel like Friends was the last show that everyone has seen.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Like, it's kind of a weird thing. I never really watched Friends. I was never really into Friends. I've never returned to it and watched it on streaming.
Yeah.
But when it was airing, everyone had seen Friends. Like, it was just somehow completely unavoidable. And I think we've moved to where nothing is like that, just the fading of network television. And
I mean, there are 30 million people watching every episode. I mean, it just that will never be replicated.
Yeah.
I can only imagine. I just can't ever see things getting back to that level of zeitgeist where just literally everyone was watching it.
Yeah, no, it's too fragmented, but it was such a cultural phenomenon. How they afforded to live in those apartments, we'll never know. It's one of the great mysteries.
Rent control, as they say in one of the episodes.
Yeah.
The Rent Stabilization Act of 1963, I think, is what they.
I mean, that's fine, but it's still too big.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So there are two shows. I think we've talked about one at length before. There are two shows that I've gathered with people to watch the finale. One was Lost. We've talked about that before. The other, not because I was hanging on every episode of Friends, but just because it was kind of like this thing in the culture. And Friends was the second, where we just, I loosely understood what was going on, that, what the plot line they're trying to pull together there at the end, that people just gathered just because it was the ending of something monolithic that you wanted to be a part of, at least having said you saw it at that time. So
I mean, that's part of it, related to what I was saying before. It was a big enough cultural phenomenon.
Yeah.
That even if you didn't watch Friends regularly, you had that feeling of wanting to see the finale of Friends when it aired. And I mean, it was just a huge show. Speaking of Matthew Perry, I really enjoyed, I haven't seen a lot of people mentioning this. I really enjoyed Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, personally. Did you ever watch that show?
See, and I've seen so many people talk about that. I am sad to say I've never caught any of that. Now I really want to go not revisit it, but I guess visit it for the first time.
Yeah, written by Aaron Sorkin, right? Which I guess we're going to do West Wing, an episode of West Wing next week. Go ahead and mention that now.
Yeah.
So a little tie in there. But it was canceled, Studio 60. But I rather enjoyed it. I don't know, check it out.
Yeah,
I think it's like one season because it got canceled.
That's something that's going to jump to the top of the list. I think if it's one season, I can knock it out and get some new Matthew Perry content I've never seen before.
Yeah, Matthew Perry, and of course you've got oh man, what's his name? I wasn't ready. Bradley Whitford. Yes, of course. Yeah, and some other people. But anyway,
one question before we leave this topic. Can you give me Bull's full name from Night Court?
I want to say his last name was Connor.
It was not Connor.
Why?
You would have given me 1,000 guesses. I would have never known. His full name was Aristotle Nostradamus Shannon. That's his name.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And they just call him Bull. And when I think Bull Connor was like sheriff in Birmingham, Alabama during the civil rights movement.
Oh, there you go.
I think I totally
almost
pulled on some other. He's a bad guy. Yeah. That's right. SAG-AFTRA is still negotiating, I guess. I mean, no
Yeah.
real news there, but relative positive that it seems like talks are ongoing, at least. Did you see this news? This hit today that apparently HBO executives are creating fake social media accounts to troll critics. Did you see that? Did you
So I had not seen this before you put this in our show notes here. This fascinated me. I can't say that it surprised me. It reminds me of something that happened with the Philadelphia 76ers about 10 or 11 years ago during the process when they were rebuilding and telling teams or telling their fans, oh, it's okay for us to finish last for 4 straight years, where the general manager created a fake Twitter profile and was responding as to why the process was the right thing to do. So it just sort of reeked a little bit of that. But I guess they were creating fake accounts to counteract negative reviews.
That's right, which doesn't make sense. And like actually the 76ers thing makes more sense. Was George Hinkey? Was that the guy's name?
Sam Hinkie.
Sam Hinkie. You got to trust the process, because there you're actually potentially trying to,
Right.
create some movement of people trusting the process. If you
Yes.
just, use the terminology. This is weird. Like, what if the show got a negative review? Who's it going to affect to see someone saying that the negative review is just virtue signaling or whatever? It's like, I don't think it quite works that way. You watch the show on your own, either you like it or you don't.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. I just decided
it was a very, very strange strategy. If you read this piece, we could put the link in, that they talk about some of the preeminent TV critics at Variety, Rolling Stone, Hollywood Reporter, and how they created these fake accounts to respond to them. Like anyone is giving any credence to what these, almost look like bot accounts are saying compared to their reviews.
Yeah, it's like you got Alan Sepinwall's review, and then some bot accounts being like, Alan is just virtue signaling, like how's that going to sway anyone? This is the kind of stuff you just ignore, but I decided, because of course, we write things, we publish things on tvobsessive.com.
Yeah.
And sometimes comments on social media, also sometimes comments on the site, and negative and whatever, and generally I ignore them. I decided now, if I get negative comments in the future, I'm just going to think to myself, made the big time.
Must be the showrunners.
It must be. Yeah. I'm just going to believe that it is the executives who think that I'm a big enough deal to bother to spend their time doing this. So, this is even better than it used to be.
Oh boy.
You gotta ignore the trolls anyway, but
ignore all that. Yeah.
What a weird story.
That was weird. Yeah, I do encourage people to read that, because that was fascinating. I'm glad you shared that with us.
Yeah, I think it just came out today.
Yeah. We'll talk about Loki a little bit later, more on the MCU beat. This show, which has sort of become this, I don't know, this model of what Marvel wants to do with their television shows. Daredevil, which obviously has had its beginnings in Netflix, has moved over now that they have the rights, finally has its new showrunner, its new creative team, new people that will run this thing. And I'm excited personally, not only because Daredevil is my all-time favorite comic book character, but also because these are the guys that used to do the Punisher TV show at Netflix. Quite dark, quite violent. How that will translate? Will it translate over to Disney Plus? We'll see. But this is just it's this show that's become representative of some of the problems that entity has as a whole. And as they're trying to get things back on track, as they're trying to launch some new things with these last 2 episodes of Loki, we'll see if this is something that sticks. But this comes on the heels of them basically seeing some dailies for what have been shot and written up already for Daredevil, and Kevin Feige hating it and firing everybody. So we'll see if this sticks.
I don't know, man. I've seen these shows, by the way.
Yeah.
Daredevil and the Punisher. I like the Netflix era. I watched these shows: Daredevil, Punisher, Luke Cage, Iron Fist,
Jessica Jones,
and then they did the Defenders.
Yep.
And I think after they did the Defenders, I didn't see anything that came after that.
Yeah,
but
Iron Fist killed it all. He was so bad that he killed everything.
But so like, does the new series? Are we getting Charlie Cox? We're getting Vincent
Yes.
D'Onofrio, and
We're getting Charlie Cox. We're getting Vincent D'Onofrio. Obviously, it's rumored to have John Bernthal back as Punisher. A lot of the supporting characters are not coming back, but the bones are there. We've had this maybe somewhat hasty introduction of Charlie Cox as Daredevil in the latest Spider-Man movie. Spoiler for a 3-year-old movie at this point.
right.
But yeah, I mean, they keep promising it, keep promising it, keep promising it. It's been delayed, delayed, delayed. Obviously, the strike has caused some heartburn there as well. But I think what the strike is allowing them to do is totally rethink their strategy, because it had just fallen off the rails, at least in terms of TV. And hopefully, selfishly for me, I hope that they get it back on where they want it to go.
Right on. Yeah, we'll see. I'm curious. I don't know
Yep,
that I'm going to watch it, but I'm curious.
I'll let you know.
Again, I just had this weird. I had at a certain point. It was right around when the Defenders came out, and then also on the film side, I just decided sort of, I'm done.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know, like if it was an overload thing or what. I just decided I'm just not doing any of this stuff anymore. I just
It
like
was
stopped watching
probably
Overload.
overload. That and Sigourney Weaver is like a evil businesswoman being the big bad guy that the Defenders can't take down. I mean, you have these 5 superheroes that can't figure out their way around Sigourney Weaver. Anyway, we can I can go a long time on that if we want to.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, okay, yeah. And then I don't know, it fell away. But yeah, it'll be interesting because Daredevil itself was pretty dark on
It
Netflix.
was good. Yeah, it was quite good.
Will they get that dark on Disney Plus? It's kind of an interesting thing how Hulu is only in the U.S. as I understand it.
Yes,
I think it's only in the U.S. I think that's right.
I think that's
Not even in like Canada.
right.
I think it's only in the U.S. I know it's not in Europe. And so a lot of the shows that will go on Hulu here just go on Disney Plus in like the UK.
Yeah, exactly.
So they've already kind of been opening up a little bit what they are willing to put out under the Disney brand, which is
Yes,
kind of interesting. Because
yes.
time was when they were like, well, this is going to be a kind of adult action film. Call it Touchstone,
That's
right?
right.
Or Miramax. These are all owned by Disney.
That's
So
right. That's right.
speaking of the broad strokes of the Disney conglomerate, Fargo, which we were planning to dig into, is coming to FX in November. They released a trailer. Any thoughts on that? We got John Hamm.
Boy, John Hamm, Juno Temple, fresh off of Ted Lasso, Joe Keery from Stranger Things. The guy, I forget his name now, the guy who played Winston on New Girl. I mean, this has got a tremendous cast. And I enjoyed season 4, the Chris Rock season in 1920s Kansas City, but I think I'm really looking forward to a sort of revisit. This apparently takes place in 2019, kind of a let's bring it back to Fargo type of environment. I think this takes place in Minnesota, but the trailer to me just looks outstanding.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.
Yeah,
And I feel like
I can't wait.
the interesting thing, I think maybe it is in Minnesota, but wasn't I think like the original movie it was largely in Minnesota also,
Yeah,
and like I think
so.
season
Yeah.
1 was in Minnesota, and it's like a lot of the stuff isn't really in Fargo, North Dakota.
Right.
But similar kind of vibe. Really, I've always found the show intriguing too in terms of what they're doing, picking up from the film, but in more thematic ways than anything. It's like more the tone and the themes that kind of resonate. And I'm really looking forward to the John Hamm of it all.
Yeah, November's got some good things coming up. That may be the top of my list.
It's
maybe
up
second.
there.
Maybe second.
I don't know. So also on FX or FX on Hulu, A Murder at the End of the World.
Yes.
Comes out in a couple weeks actually before Fargo. This is a show from Britt Marling and Zal. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name. Sorry. I just can't do it. Anyway, the creators of the OA and so on. You ever watch the OA?
No, I never saw that.
It got canceled in a way that really sucks.
Oh, okay.
Like it painful cancellation by Netflix here. 2 seasons. They had always said they had 5 seasons planned, I think it was, and so it's kind of hanging out there like, well, what was the rest of this story, stupid Netflix, but they're just on to other projects, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I don't know. So that's a bummer. I still do recommend the OA. It's a very
Okay.
kind of unique show, and
You're just not going to get any resolution.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting how personally, I'm okay with canceled shows.
Yeah.
I'm okay with like fragments, like call me a capital R romantic, like the historical movement. The fragment can have value, and
Yeah.
I enjoy any number of shows that are canceled. But then sometimes when you're in the midst of watching it in real time and you expect that there are going to be more, and you, as I do, write a long article on the OA after season 2,
Yeah.
presuming there will be more, and
Yeah.
then it gets canceled, it's kind of like, part of me wants to revise that long article in terms of, well, here's an interpretation just
Yeah.
based on what we have and knowing that it's all that we have, instead of presuming that there will be more. It does end on like a massive cliffhanger.
Right. Okay.
You
Well, someday you and I should do a podcast dedicated to Westworld. Just not a whole watch or anything, but just something that dedicates to a show that clearly had gotten to the point where it was creatively bankrupt and probably needed to end. Probably needed to end, but so many people were so upset that it ended, and they want to see what the end was, what was going to happen. Just sort of that dichotomy very much interested me.
Yeah, that one is, because I think they only had one more season planned. It's like, come on,
Yes, yes,
come
exactly,
on, what are you doing?
exactly. Yeah.
But
Anyway, that's
back
another.
in the day, I remember, kind of before what they call prestige TV, or in the midst of when that was getting going, or back in the time when I was like renting TV shows on
Mm-hmm.
DVD, when that started to be something you could do in like the mid-aughts.
Yep.
I
Yep.
discovered any number of shows that I really liked that were canceled. And of course, Twin Peaks was one of them.
Yes, it
Well,
was.
I discovered that a little before that, but Twin Peaks was canceled, and I never imagined they were going to bring it back the way that they did. Although I love
Yeah.
that they did. But there are other ones like not Dead Like Me, Dead Like Me, yeah, Dead Like Me.
Okay.
And I don't know. I didn't have notes planned here, but I remember there being this period of time where I thought, like, man, all the good shows get canceled, and that was just because it was like,
So what happens? Yeah.
they would, whatever network would take a chance on it, and it would be this sort of unique, distinctive thing, and then it wouldn't get enough viewers, so they would cancel it. One thing,
Mm-hmm.
like prior to streaming,
Yes.
and once you got streaming, more things would get revived or picked up
Right.
elsewhere, or it became a little less common there for a little while, at least, for things to just be kind of suddenly canceled. I don't know, now Netflix started doing it all over the place, so um
They'll take up anything if there's a petition behind it. There's crowd support behind it.
well, I don't know about that, because with the OA you had people like protesting in the streets and stuff.
That's true. Yeah.
Honestly, and Netflix doesn't care. It's all about the algorithm. Anyhow, but so yeah, that's coming up. Fargo, The Curse, which we talked about before. Very excited about The Curse. That's on Showtime. Coming to the streaming service, I guess, on like Friday at midnight, and then going to air on the linear network on Sunday. People are curious about
Oh,
that.
okay. Okay. So you get a little
Um,
early if you got the streaming. Okay.
yeah, so it comes out November 10th on streaming, November 12th on the linear Showtime network. We've also got the 60th anniversary Doctor Who specials coming in November, towards the end of the
Coming in a
month.
couple weeks. Still never seen 1 second of Doctor Who, but I'm excited for those that like it.
I think I might be making you watch Doctor Who in a couple weeks, because it's like it would line up right. I've got one more episode to choose for our program here, and we'll do West
Yes.
Wing next week, and then I close this out, and it lines up with the 60th anniversary. So I think we might do an episode of Doctor Who.
Boy, I will be so I'll be so lost. Okay, I'll
Well,
look
at
forward
least
to
the episode I have in mind, you don't need context for it.
Okay,
So,
okay.
but yeah, lots of stuff on the horizon. You're excited also about Monarch. What is it called? Monarch Legacy of Monsters.
Yeah, Monarch Legacy of the Monsters. The nerd culture is excited about this. We get this sort of tale in between several of the last Godzilla movies, where this show that spans three different generations and this company called Monarch, and sort of what they knew about the history and existence of these monsters, and stars Kurt Russell and his son as sort of two versions of the same character. It's a fascinating concept. I'm a big fan of those movies, have been since, that's genre of movie since a kid. So I'm very much looking forward to this show. May write on it, still TBD, but may write on it. We'll see. But I'm very excited about the show.
You got a couple weeks to decide. It is one of those where I find myself wondering, and I don't mean this to be demeaning at all. How much will there be to write on?
Yeah,
is maybe the question here.
that's right.
But certainly you could do it in one way or another. You wouldn't necessarily have to go week by week like we often do. Do you ever play that video game Rampage?
Oh yes. Oh, I love
always Rampage. Think about Rampage whenever this stuff comes up, and I don't think that's like canon.
No.
I always think of think of Rampage. People are familiar. You like play either as a Godzilla or King Kong. You're just like destroying buildings.
Yes, there was a movie recently with The Rock about that concept.
There was.
Yeah,
I didn't see it.
Me neither.
I hope it was super campy.
Yeah, I'm sure it was,
because that's what it would deserve to be.
I'm sure.
Incredibly campy film.
Yeah. Well, beyond that, we have 2 episodes of Loki left. If you haven't, obviously, I'm not going to spoil anything, but if you haven't seen it, the episode 4 of 6 total episodes ended on a cliffhanger you would normally think Marvel would reserve for the finale of a show or the end of a movie, but it was quite a shock to see the end of this 4th episode. And I, for one, have talked a lot about the predictability of where their shows are going. I have no idea where they're going to take this, and I'm frankly excited to watch it tomorrow.
That's cool. That's great. I did see. It hardly even seemed like a news story, but there's some murmurs, there's some rumors about Jonathan Majors and if they're going to end up replacing him. And
that did come out today, that there are now maybe some behind closed doors discussions that maybe we don't go with him. There's so many other villains we can focus on. Why would we sort of put ourselves in this corner if things don't look good? Which, by the way, the judge did not dismiss his case, so he's going to trial at the end of November.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it kind of came up today. Like, I thought there was something today.
Yeah, there was.
But then I was reading the article and I thought, this doesn't seem really new, and it's not definitive in any way,
Yeah.
So.
There's been speculation since it first came out in the spring, but this was, I think, the first somewhat substantial report that the conversations are happening, now that first pretrial motion is over and was dismissed. They have to start reckoning with what's going to happen in the future.
I, again, not in the midst of watching all the Marvel stuff, but from what I know about it, and reading your recaps of Loki and everything, it sounds to me like they have made this character pretty central. So
absolutely,
recast him. That's what I say. Just recast it. If it comes down to it, I mean, you're innocent till proven guilty and all of that, and various things might happen in terms of how it goes. But if it comes down to it, I'll just say recast him.
Just recast him.
Since it's a recasting actors, Remember when Edward Norton was the Hulk?
There's a great book that just came out by Dave Gonzalez, Joanna Robinson of The Ringer, talking about the history of the MCU, that has great stories about what transpired behind the scenes there, and how he is one of 2 people that Kevin Feige has said Marvel will never, ever consider working with them ever again. So it's interesting stories there if you want to go check
There was a time in my life, and this just fell off. There was a time in my life where I was committed to seeing every film that man is in.
Oh, okay.
And I was doing it for a while until, like, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. Didn't keep up with it. But there was a time where I thought, like, if Ed Norton's in it, I'm seeing it. I was so
Yes.
taken by some of his early performances in like Primal Fear and American History X and Fight Club and things like this. He's a
So
good
good.
actor.
He was
Very
so
good
good.
actor.
Yeah.
Very good actor. All right. Well, I think that about does it for our
Yeah.
news and notes. So, we're gonna talk about Better Call Saul.
Yes.
Um, season 6, episode 7, Plan and Execution. Very significant episode. We're gonna get into spoilers. Potentially, maybe some spoilers might creep in from things that happen later in this final season of Better Call Saul. So big warning if you haven't seen Better Call Saul on the other side of this. I mean, you're free to listen anyway, but like, I don't know. I'm generally not one who cares a whole lot about spoilers, but this is like
Yeah.
pivotal stuff that we're getting into here with this episode. Um, and so
We
yeah,
we
well,
might have to spoil some plot points of Breaking Bad. We might have to.
yeah, that was Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad's on the table too.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, are there people who've seen Better Call Saul who haven't seen Breaking Bad?
We've had this conversation. I would love to hear from someone who has and
I
what
think
their
that
thoughts are.
I think that'd be very interesting. Yeah, let's like have him on the pod. Let's
Yes.
talk. How did that? But anyway, so as per usual, we'll take a quick little break here, pop in a little bit of music, and on the other side of that, we're going to pick up with Better Call Saul, Plan and Execution. Okay, we're back as promised, talking about Better Call Saul. This episode, Plan and Execution. Ryan said when The Last of Us, long time came out, which we talked about last week, he said that episode replaced this one on his personal Mount Rushmore of all time great TV episodes.
Yep.
Are you sticking with that?
So this is a discussion. I knew you would ask this question. So this is a discussion of sort of what you value in terms of just real emotional gut punches versus dramatic propulsion, moving the story to a place that you've really been looking forward to if you've been invested in something. This is very hard for me to decide. I think I'll just on odd days pick one, on even days pick the other in terms of which one's going to be on my list. They're both so great. And there's my flip flop answer.
Roosevelt, which one?
Yeah.
Yeah. To remind people of this episode, this was the mid-season finale. They aired season 6 in 2 parts. I didn't double check the dates. I believe this was airing in something like May of last year, 2022. I think something like that. And then there was a hiatus, and we had to wait for like a couple of months before we got episode 8 of season 6,
May 2022. Yep.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a bit more down the line. To remind you what happens in this episode. This is the one. This is the Howard one. This is the Lalo Howard one. So basically, we're kicking off with Jimmy and Kim reshooting the fake photos of Caemeron, right? One of the things I love, by the way, Ryan, is that like I love how Better Call Saul does not tell you what's happening. You know what I mean? It's just you figure it out, right?
Yeah.
So like we actually open this episode with Lalo going into the rest area, taking a shower, taking a nap in his car, going down to the sewer, getting out his binoculars, and then it pans around to see that he's watching the laundromat. You kind of have to like figure out what's going on, right? And similarly, the plan. I love the title of the episode, by the way. The plan, which Jimmy and Kim have been working on all season, has never been laid out for us. You've got like they have their board with their post-it notes or whatever, but we've never gotten an exposition scene where they say, "Here's what we're going to do to Howard." That's not there. You have to kind of piece it together. But it's really well done. So they're reshooting it because Jimmy ran into Casimiro in the liquor store in
Yes.
the previous episode. And, oh man, the guy's got a broken arm, right? Bringing a little bit from that previous episode, Axe and Grind, insofar as I think it's super significant how it's Kim who, in learning that information, Jimmy says, well, we're just going to have to call this off. And Kim says, no, it has to be the day. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
You turns your car away from what would have been a very important meeting for her legitimate career as a lawyer in Santa Fe. And she doesn't go. She said, this is more important to her. They're reshooting all of that. And then, okay, all of that carries forward in terms of pulling off the prank on Howard. It's very elaborate.
Sure, it's a prank. Sure.
Maybe it's more than a prank, but we'll call it a prank. We'll get into more details here down the line. And then, of course, at the end of the episode, Howard comes and confronts them in their apartment, and Lalo walks in. And of course, Jimmy thought Lalo was dead, and Kim had been lying to him about that.
Mm-hmm.
And Lalo shoots Howard in the head. And that's the end of the episode.
Cut to black, yeah.
This is a great episode. I love this episode.
Yeah.
Where do we start in terms of
where do we start? Where do we start? Oh boy. This, let me just ask this question. This is the one note I had, and we can go whatever order you want, but this last season, similar to last season of Breaking Bad, was broken into two parts. You mentioned this. May 2022 was this episode 7. Episode 8 didn't air until mid-July of that year, last year. This mid-season finale ends on this incredible cliffhanger of Lalo shooting Howard. The last thing we see is him falling to the floor. There was in Breaking Bad a similar mid-season finale that ended on a cliffhanger, if you remember this, with Hank discovering the poetry book, and Gale had inscribed it, and he sort of puts together who Walt is. One of the better than the other. I just find both of them. I mean, they're just amazing.
They're both amazing, and it's so hard to compare. This ties in, I guess, to what I was referencing before a little bit. I've had this thought for a while, like as I was watching Better Call Saul season to season, even where I really started thinking, like, man, is this show better than Breaking Bad?
Yeah,
and I think that where I come down on it is, I don't know that I could fully endorse that. I think I like it more, which is a slightly different claim. I think part of why I like it more is that with Walt's arc in Breaking Bad, as I think I said when we watched Ozymandias, by the time you get to Ozymandias, he is evil and I hate him.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Like he is just, I don't have empathy for him anymore. He's just bad. Like I'm still compelled and everything. But I don't think I ever lose my empathy for Jimmy or Kim.
No, I don't think so either. And I think that one of the things that makes this show so great, it makes these shows on par with one another, right? Breaking Bad was so good. People thought, how will Better Call Saul ever live up to that? Is, Better Call Saul sort of followed this idea of what does it mean for one man to break bad, even if it was initially for good intentions. Better Call Saul seemingly had so much more work to do to get to the level of how prestigious and incredible Breaking Bad was, because of all these intricacies and how you knew the character already, how there were things that you knew he was going to be doing. What does it matter? You know what his endpoint is anyways. It had sort of more work to do. And I just, we've talked before and probably will talk today about how they always painted themselves out of these corners that they seemingly found themselves in. And it just, I think doing that work raised it to that level, certainly. It might even, I would not blame somebody if it put it ahead of Breaking Bad.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the writing, I just say, because they did create these problems for themselves, and to say, we're going to start way back here when he's Jimmy McGill and so on. And like, they worked this out as they wrote the show season to season, which is so incredibly impressive to me. Particularly Kim, as I understand it, they didn't know where this was going. There was no even original intention for Kim to be as hugely significant of a character as she ended up being. that worked out in terms of the writing. This whole question about Lalo, even as I understand it, Vince Gilligan was like, well, just because Saul mentions Lalo one time, I don't know, we have to like do anything with that. We can just ignore it. And everyone else, Peter Gold and everyone else, was like, no, we gotta figure out how to do the Lalo thing. So it's like they set these problems, and Lalo, I mean, what a great character. They fit him in. Kim, I mean, not ever mentioned by name. Kim was never mentioned by name. There is a little bit of inconsistency, maybe, in terms of how many wives Saul had. We won't worry about that. They do such a great job in general, and precisely the big problem was, how do you get from A to B?
Yeah.
And increasingly it became, well, what happens to Kim? What happens with Kim?
Yeah.
A lot of people thought she was going to die.
Yes.
I didn't think she was going to die. I never did. I always kind of thought it would be, what happened? Not in detail, obviously. Like I wasn't predicting all of the details, but something along these lines. And this is the pivotal moment.
Yeah, and you reference Axe and Grind right before this episode, Plan Execution, how she makes that literal U-turn as she's driving to what could be a career-changing meeting for what would have been a lucrative and prestigious job with a foundation. Have we seen these little nuggets before of what her true nature is, in terms of, we understand now she's the one who said, like you mentioned, she's the one who said it's going to happen today. She's the one who decides, I'm turning around, I'm going back to do this, do this plot instead of go to this job interview. Do we know ahead of time that this is who she is, that this is her nature, or is this okay? We sort of are seeing a new character here.
I think it's very interesting because it's there throughout in various ways, and a lot of people, as Better Call Saul was airing, kept kind of taking this line of, like, Jimmy is corrupting Kim.
Yeah.
And people were taking that line in the world of viewers of the show and in the show itself. This is like an interesting thing I think they always did. Whenever anyone took that view within the show itself, Chuck, for example, what did Kim do? Double down on being in it with Jimmy.
Yeah.
And so I think there's always been, and it got pissed off too, right? There's always been an important way in which Kim is into it. It goes back to earlier on, they're scamming people as lower stakes stuff. She helps him with the whole Chuck situation. What they did to Chuck was really kind of that hurt.
Yes, it does. Your brother.
That hurt. I mean, that was, but they persist. It was kind of her idea, as I recall, to do anything to Howard here, to hatch this plan. And so the way that Kim has always been into it, and there's a certain duality to her character, because on the other hand, she, will go do pro bono or public defender work, all of that kind of stuff, kind of looking out for the little guy. This is one of my questions, So Howard, it's not the final scene, not just how Lalo shows up and she's Howard in the head, but before that, Patrick Fabian gets such a brilliant monologue, such a brilliant performance here of Howard. I want to talk about a couple things here with regard to Howard, but let's start here. He gives this whole speech and he's asking why they did it. Is he right? Is he hitting the nail on the head here? What do you think?
Yeah, to what you're saying earlier, he almost gives the thesis of the show here, back to our point we were just making, which is, he says, he starts to understand this was not just a Saul or Jimmy manipulation on Kim to get this done. He says, you two are perfect for each other. right? That they are both they're one and the same. They have these same motivations, whether it was any of the things he listed, whether Howard's just an asshole, whether they disrespected him, whether it's what he did to them in the past. It's not about make myself more money or make myself above you. This is just who they are to want to put this guy in a hole.
What allows you to do this to me?
Yes.
He asked, And so I want to talk about our impressions of Howard, because part of what I think makes this episode such a gut punch to me is that over the course of the series, I largely have been also you kind of hate Howard.
Yeah.
Like what? I don't want to speak for you. I want to ask you that question, but for me, he's just kind of a prick. Yes. I don't have any particular reason. He just kind of seems like this smiley, glad hand, smarmy, they do manage in the show to soften that a little bit here in his final two episodes, like that. It's in episode 6, right? In Axe and Grind, when he makes his wife the cappuccino.
Yes.
With a peace sign on it.
Yes.
That was a little poignant because she doesn't care. She just like pours it in a travel mug. And you can start feeling that about Howard, but certainly throughout, I had a fairly negative view. And I feel like the show does a great job of kind of making us complicit in the enjoyment of what they're doing to Howard. So my question, did you feel that way in general? Or
yeah, and I will say, maybe it's just something of my nature that I guess just don't like people who are like Howard in general. This sort of smarminess, this haughtiness, this the way that he acts this whole time. Even when I think the guy's name is Carrie, when he's helping Carrie, the guy who spills the sodas before the Sandpiper meeting, he's sort of I don't know, really condescending to the guy. Oh, you know how this works and how these these soda cans we can fix that. Just a sense of, I hate thinking that we got to a point, or I got to a point where I was like, all right, Howard got it, got what was coming to him, but it's sort of this, was he actually the good guy compared to Jimmy and Kim, and why am I not rooting more for him?
No, I'm right there with you. Like that, he's like laughing at what's happening to him, or what have you. And the thing is, he never really did anything wrong.
Yeah.
And you do realize that he just kind of, as you say, you just don't like guys like this, and it's kind of like exactly what he says about himself, I think, in the apartment, in terms of, I think he does hit on their motivations, but then particularly getting at what happens. Well, this is deeply unfair.
Yes,
they want him to die, for God's sakes. Also, along the way here, I've always found this is noteworthy because I think they do suck us in and kind of make us complicit. You have the scene where Jimmy and Kim are listening on the phone call, and then the culmination of that, where they are in the background, blurry, having some sexy time. This is the only time that occurs in the entire show. This is the only time we ever see Jimmy and Kim getting it on.
Yes. Plenty of times they're in bed together, but yeah, it's like, this is what gets them going.
They're getting off on it.
This type of scheming and plotting and doing things that, I don't know if it's about doing things to certain people, but it's almost about being able to come up with it and get away with it to their own benefit.
Yeah. And some thought about like that. Who are they getting one over on?
Yeah.
The privileged or something, or kinds of structures and institutions that manages to align with some thought of being on the side of the little guy or what have you.
Yeah, and I think that it's the other lawyer, co-counsel in the Sandpiper case, who says, they're profit participants. It doesn't benefit them, Howard. Why would they do this? It doesn't benefit them to reduce the settlement because they're going to get money. They just want to win. They just want to beat Howard. They just want to say that, no, actually, despite your upbringing and your schooling and all the things that you have, you're not better than us. We could do something better than you, and watch us.
Yeah. And so a couple of gut punches. I mean, I love the scene there with the guy you're referring to. I'm blanking on his name now. I mean, like, I know the name of the actor and also the name of the character, and I'm just blanking on it at the moment. But the one moment that was always really, really striking to me here was when Howard figures it all out. He lays out what has happened. He is correct. And the response is, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It just doesn't matter at this point. We lost it. We the whole arbitration got messed up here.
Yep.
They've changed their offer. Just got to think about what's in the interest of our clients.
Exactly.
And
it's almost like that. That's maybe the one issue I have with it is that Jimmy and Kim seem like people that want the little person to win. He wants his former clients who lived at Sandpiper to get all that they can. He's sort of minimizing them and reducing what he is reducing what their reward can be for this. But but even that, he doesn't care as much about them as they still care about beating Howard.
Yeah, I mean, there is a level to this though that, like, is the important question the amount of money at the end of the day, or the timeliness of it?
Yeah.
I think there is a level where, from Jimmy's point of view, you're talking about senior citizens here. Are some of them going to die before this thing's over? And there is something to this. I've had this thought at various points in my life where, to some degree, where you are in terms of economic class can almost be answered by this sort of question. Does it matter when you get your money? Because if you're in a kind of precarious economic circumstances, your paycheck being delayed by a couple of weeks might mean you don't make rent.
Exactly.
Whereas if you're well off,
yeah,
then all that really matters at the end of the day is that the books are settled and they're getting as much as possible. So I don't know that it's really a contradiction in terms of Jimmy's
I'm glad you're saying this, because they actually spend what may initially think is an inordinate amount of time talking to the lead, I guess, defendant on this settlement, about how long it may take to finish this process and get the money. The wheels of justice turn slowly, right? Mm-hmm. And they spend so much time talking to her about that, to the point of, you're right. A lot of people on this case, maybe even most people on this lawsuit, are not going to see any of this money. This is going to get passed down to their families or whatever. So it's more about a sense of not what they won't win, but more about what Kim and Jimmy will gain by beating Howard.
Yeah, and if the settlement happens now, then people are getting the money now, and all of that's tied into it. I think that there's some other stuff on background here that I don't recall the details of, but that Jimmy does want them, to settle it now, and so on. I want to talk about John Ennis a little bit. John Ennis.
Sure. Lenny? I don't think I have near as much background with him as you do, but I did go do a little bit of homework on that.
You ever watch Mr. Show?
No.
I mean, that's a big thing here. Mr. Show alum, John Ennis, of course. Mr. Show with Bob and David. Bob being Bob Odenkirk. Old HBO sketch comedy show, which I would recommend to people if they haven't seen it. Kind of cool to see John Ennis in here. He's playing Lenny, who is the decoy for the judge. I don't know, not a whole lot to say about that. I don't know if people are aware, when in this episode he's pushing carts in the parking lot, he's practicing lines from Angels in America.
Yes, I did look up what that was that he's rehearsing. He's not just quoting philosophy to himself. He's rehearsing something.
Yeah, I figured it was. Like, okay, well, what is it? It's like Angels in America. He's a funny character in this, but I just recall being like, "Hey, Mr. Show."
Yeah.
I mean, and if people haven't seen Mr. Show, you look at the alumni, as it were, right? Yeah. Of course, Bob Odenkirk, who I never would have imagined would become such a like esteemed, great dramatic actor.
Right.
But he has David Cross. Right?
Yes.
This is Bob and David. But then you've got like Tom Kenny, who's the voice of SpongeBob SquarePants. Lots of other people were on that show too, like Jack Black and
Oh wow, okay.
And Sarah Silverman and
you can find it on Max still, can't you?
we won't talk about Jay Johnston, who was
Okay.
was in the January 6th. Anyway, but no, do recommend Mr. Show to people. Is it on Max at this point?
Well, I want to say I saw it on Max at some point.
I hope so. For a while, it was one of those that you couldn't really find streaming.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought I saw it there.
We have to double check on that. They might have put it up on Max. That'd be great. I actually have every season of Mr. Show on DVD.
Oh wow.
There's only 4 seasons. It's not like a huge amount. There's stuff on YouTube and stuff like that. Anyhow, you've got that. What else? Howard calls them Leopold and Loeb. Did you get this reference?
Leopold. I remember looking this up at the time because I did not understand the reference then, so I had to revisit it. These two guys who apparently back at the turn of the 20th century or close to the turn of the 20th century kidnapped and murdered a 14-year-old boy because they thought they were smarter than authorities and can get away with it.
Yeah. Well, they were maybe Nietzschean Übermensch.
Yeah, that's right.
Or, whatever. It's a very, I don't know if it's an obscure reference if you're a lawyer. It's very fitting that this is the reference that Howard makes, I thought. Yeah. It's I don't know if I think it's quite on the nose.
Yeah. Interestingly about these two, did you see how both of them died?
Leopold and Loeb?
Yes.
I don't
one of them at a very young age shanked in prison and died, I think age 30. The other got paroled, moved to Puerto Rico and lived till he was like 70 years old. So interesting kind of I don't know, parallel between our two characters maybe, but that's just their fates.
Well, maybe one there's a parallel, like one of them was more like Walt. Is that what you're thinking? Or?
Could be, or if you've seen the end of where Jimmy and Saul end up at the end of so one of them is stuck somewhere without possibility of escape, it seems like, or possibility of parole.
Yeah, no one's getting shanked though.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what I thought about Walt, because Walt dies at the end of Breaking Bad.
Right. Spoiler.
That's right. But Jimmy
an obscure reference, but very, very fitting, probably.
I went ahead and watched the next episode, as I mentioned to you before we started recording, because you have this cliffhanger, and it occurred to me that part of what made this episode stick in my mind as so powerful was they gave us this and then made us sit with it for a couple months. It's not in my mind even just that it's a cliffhanger. I mean, it sort of is. You don't know exactly what Lalo has in mind. Why is he there? He showed up at their apartment saying he wants to talk to his lawyers and all of that. But just such a gut punch of like the bigger cliffhanger to me almost is like, okay, well, what's this going to mean for Jimmy and Kim?
Right.
And I think I could already see though that it's like, okay, this is going to be the thing that drives them apart. And then what happens later is kind of the inevitable. But I thought it'd be interesting. Well, instead of waiting a couple of months like I had to the first time, what if I just watched the next episode right away?
Right away.
And so I did that, and it's a really good episode too.
It is, yeah. It's a fantastic pairing. It make people wait in between. I mean, obviously, this was heighten the anticipation and the views of that episode. But you're right, not so much a cliffhanger as in, oh my gosh, what's going to happen, or what are they setting up next, but more of a, what Lalo's ultimate plan is. That's not a surprise, but what's happening here, how is it going to impact our two main characters? You had no sense that this is where it was going to go. And so where you thought it might happen, where they get away with something and there's a Lalo freeing confrontation. Now those two things have merged, and how is that all going to impact him? I thought that was pretty brilliant.
Yeah, I absolutely did not see it coming that they were going to intersect Lalo
Yeah.
and Howard like this. And my understanding is they decided that as they were writing season 6, that this is what was going to happen.
Yeah.
I was watching this video on YouTube. I think it was put out by Variety or something, talking about this episode and all of that. And they let Patrick Fabian know prior to the beginning of season 6 that his character was going to die, but no one else knew. And he also didn't tell anyone. And Racy Horn was saying, she read the script for this episode, and she was really concerned that no one had told Patrick before this. But they had. He wasn't finding out for the first time. Yeah. They had. He'd just been going about his business, I mean, they hadn't told him when, So he says each week or whatever, he'd get the script. And they're like, not this week.
Not this week.
Maybe they changed their minds. Patrick Fabian's a really charming guy too.
He was quite good. This two did a lot of good, or these three, I guess, did a lot of good sort of supplementary social media video content around this last season. This is really fantastic.
Yeah, one of the things that was great too, I think it was in further than I rewatch. I think it's in episode 9 of this season when they have Howard's memorial.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a bunch of pictures around those that are actually from Patrick Fabian's Instagram account.
Oh gosh. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's kind of great.
Oh man. Like I said, I'm glad I revisited it. This is such a good episode, not just for what's inside of the 50 minutes, but the context that it plays for what happened before and after. Just so strong.
Yeah. And so in episode 8, you get Lalo's plan, right? Which again, that when I was rewatching that episode, I almost thought, like, "Ooh, is this one better?
Mm-hmm.
Is this a better episode?" Because it's so you're on the edge of your seat as Kim goes through with it.
Yes.
Yes. And then that culminates, to remind people, in Gus killing Lalo, and then they bury Lalo and Howard together in the lab.
Yes.
And, so they were always there
together.
Now we have to think about, you're watching Breaking Bad.
Yep.
You're watching Fly.
Yeah.
Lalo and
Howard are right there
the whole time. So great, good. I think we've about covered it. Anything else we want to hit on here with this episode?
That's a great recap. I was very happy to revisit this. Like I said, one of my favorite shows, but I've not rewatched any one episode until now when going back and redoing this. This was the right one to do.
Yeah, same. And honestly, part of me wants to rewatch this entire show from the beginning, which I haven't done.
Yeah.
And Breaking Bad. Anyway.
Well, next week we're going to move on to my last entry into this top 4 Hall of Fame, Mount Rushmore, whatever we want to call it. We are going to look at West Wing season 2, episode 22, the finale, titled 2 Cathedrals. Have you watched West Wing before?
I have.
Okay.
I've seen all of West Wing. I know what this episode is.
So sure. For anyone that's not seen West Wing, if you're not going to watch the whole thing, which I highly recommend, I might suggest 21 and 22 together. That you will understand why 22 is so powerful when you see some of the events of 21.
Fair. It's been a bit for me. So people take that recommendation, or try to binge a couple seasons of the West Wing by next week. I think the West Wing is a great show, and certainly this stands out, and as probably also the episode of the West Wing that I likely would have chosen. So
episode 1 entitled 18th of Potomac, 22 entitled 2 Cathedrals, maybe widely thought as the best part of this series. It's debatable, but probably thought of as the best.
Yeah, there's an article on tvobsessive.com written by the inimitable Cat Smith on this episode, which we'll go ahead and shout that out now. Go read that.
I'm gonna go check it out.
I wasn't necessarily talking to you, but you can also go read it. But Cat has a little bit of a personal angle, which is kind of interesting. That's a good article. I do recommend it to everyone. And we'll dig in on Two Cathedrals here next week. I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, I guess that about does it for this time.
That's it for me.
All right. Yeah, thanks again, everyone, for listening. As always, please do leave us a good review wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you want to follow the site on social media, look for TV Obsessive. You can find us on most social media platforms except for Threads. TVObsessive.com. Also, just go to TVObsessive.com and you can add yourself to get daily emails. I've never mentioned this on the pod before, but this is a possibility. It says screw social media. I just want TV Obsessive directly in my inbox. And you get like one email a day and it'll show you like what published the day before.
That's a great suggestion. Great suggestion.
Yeah, that's good. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it, just like make sure it works. Good, it's working. Good. But okay, again, thanks everyone for listening, and I guess we'll see you next week talking about The West Wing, along with our usual news and notes.
All right, see you next time.
Okay.